Yeah, thanks for joining me. I want to talk a little bit about 9.0.5. We actually got a release date for patch 9.0.5 for World of Warcraft Shadowlands. So that's going to be coming out next Tuesday, which is March 9th. So that'll be the next reset. So I'd expect like a full reset or, an extended reset. So I wanted to go through all of the patch notes. I'm probably going to be giving mostly a perspective on probably rating and Mythic Plus with a little bit of PvP splashed in there. If I've just noticed some things from what I've seen PvPing and maybe how some of the stuff will affect it. So you just start from the top. Really, here's all the sections of the table of contents. The first thing up, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I did read ahead for some of these. A lot of tuning on the companions for the mission tables and the covenants. The biggest reason I think was that Night Fae always got the reputation of being one of the easiest, so I can see that they're already tweaking some of the other ones too. But I really do think that this is not like a great use of time, in my opinion. But hey, I mean, I guess some people would like it too. Undead cloaks will now be tattered as the Forsaken wearing them. It's kind of cool. I didn't see that before. There's a lot of kind of class changes too, and visual effects. Like this one probably is something that I think was very, very much needed. Primarily the Ashen Hollow change, where they're actually reducing the visual effects for allied players. I think Wild Spirits isn't bad. Resonating Arrow I think is probably good, especially in PvP, because with Kyrian, it's good to know where that radius is. But I guess if you're an allied person, it wouldn't really matter as much. Abomination Limb I didn't think was too bad. And same with Swarming Mist for Venthyr Death Knights. And then Death's Due too. I don't really see a lot of Venthyr or Night Fae Death Knight, so I can't say. I always thought the Ancient Aftershock for Night Fae Warrior was pretty cool. But Ashen Hollow legitimately takes up like your entire screen. I was actually just watching VODs before this, and our Holy Pally, Kitty Wampus, like as soon as he does Ashen Hollow, it just takes over my entire screen, and you just feel like you're standing in something wrong, like bad, which is not a very good fun feeling to have. Many other abilities are now better at avoiding in-combat enemies that the player has not engaged. This is really good. Specifically with Convoke, something I noticed, I was doing a rare spawn, and I didn't realize I was in combat with the mob behind me, but then like a Star Surge gets shot out two different directions instead of the main mob that I was hitting. So this feels good. Same with Starfall on there too. Chain Harvest I have not played yet, so I can't really give too much. Divine Toll I can definitely say though that has happened before. Some other just kind of tuning things. I think the really big one for Death Knights is the fact that they're trying to bring their Covenant abilities more in line. Right now, Abomination Limb is the go-to pretty much for everything. It does insane amount of damage, and it's just kind of set it and forget it too. You don't have to worry about them walking out of your Death and Decay or Death's Due. I don't really think Shackle the Unworthy was even remotely good. I think it was better for tanks than it was for Blood Decays than it was for any of the other specs. But this one here is huge in my opinion. Them no longer pulling out stealthies too, because that just got really annoying, at least to witness. And then not now incorrectly damage and pulls enemies while the Death Knight is crowd controlled. Yeah, I don't know if that was happening or wasn't, but I guess it's good to see that too. And then obviously the change in Death's Due. From everything I've been reading, I don't know that it's going to push Abomination Limb off the top, but hey, maybe someone that's using these two covenants is not going to feel a little bit better. So I'm glad to see they're at least changing that. Unbound Chaos, fairly certain that this was actually 500% on the PTR, and then they nerfed it to 300%, or it was a complete talent change. I'm not quite sure. I haven't really played Havoc too much, but I know a lot of people will be excited about this change. This was probably needed. Elysian Decree being reduced by 10%. It's absolutely busted right now on Vengeance Demon Hunter. I'm actually leveling my Vengeance Demon Hunter, and it's just insane the amount of damage you do. I don't even know if 10% is going to be enough, to be quite honest. I think that it probably needs to be nerfed a little bit more, or maybe even just reworked to be something that is not just a straight damage sigil. I don't know. Maybe it's just reduced damage taken only with some sort of like dot effect or something, because Demon Hunters, don't have that. So that would be pretty interesting to see, in my opinion. Maybe like a damage over time effect, but who knows. Fire to the Flame has been redesigned. Your damage abilities now have a chance to call forth a demon. I'm actually going to mute this. Sorry about that. Mute site. Call forth the demon from the theater of pain for 25 seconds. Throw glaive deals lethal damage to the demon, which explodes on death, dealing damage to nearby enemies and healing you for 30% of your max health. The explosion deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So like I said, I was leveling my Vengeance Demon Hunter and I was doing the campaign, so I actually got to play with this when I was leveling through Maldraxxus. It is a little weird to have a mob kind of run at you, and you have to kill it. I noticed too, it didn't just die from passive AoE, maybe as Havoc it would, but I don't know. It didn't feel good. I think by adding the mechanism of that throw glaive now does lethal damage to it. I mean, that's one button you have to press and target, so that's a lot easier to manage. And the fact that it explodes on death now gives it that kind of, additional component to it, which I think is, once again, kind of like I was saying with Leason's Decree. They're just kind of tweaking it and kind of changing the core of a little bit of what it is and what it's meant to be. So I personally like this. Is it going to get me to switch mine? Probably not. But these other 2 nerfs to the Hunt and Sinful Brand are definitely needed. I know the Hunt in PvP is just fucking bonkers. I mean, it just really is just absolutely insane how much it does. So it really is a good move on their part to just kind of keep tuning this stuff, reworking it, and then continuing on to repeat decree based on damage. This is probably not bad either. I was talking to our main tank, Lamb, and he was actually even saying this Fell Defender one that was originally for Fiery Brand is actually going to be going to Fell Devastation and reducing that cooldown, which I would have to agree with him. I like that. Fiery Brand, it feels good to press. Fell Devastation feels awesome to press. So the fact that they're giving you more metas, where you're, Fell Devastation, which also is healing you too, and putting you in meta, I personally agree with that one. Not too sure on this one. I mean, will no longer engage creatures in combat with prison expires. Okay, well, that's not bad. I mean, I think that this is just, once again, tuning. So not bad on Demon Hunter either. Just, once again, tuning, a little bit of reworking. I think that overall they're in a very good spot. At least Vengeance's Havoc really doesn't have too much of their niches. I mean, we really haven't been bringing ours to raid that much. They're okay right now. I think that they're obviously amazing in AoE situations, but single target, they definitely need a buff too. Talk about Druid, tried and true here. So just overall, just buffing Rejuve and Wild Growth. I mean, this is a pretty substantial buff, I'll say, from the sense of, you have the Druid Legendary that has a chance to proc additional Rejuves. This will be absolutely busted in raiding scenarios. I don't think it's fixing the core issue, though, of healing in raids for Druid, which is that they really only have Trank. And now if they're, Night Fae, which most of them are, Convoke's okay for that too, but you're bringing them for throughput at the end of the day. And then Wild Growth too. I mean, this is really going to, I feel like, be more noticeable in Mythic Plus, more so than anything, because they are just very, very good in Mythic Plus already, and this will just push it over the top. Adaptive Swarm, the damage and healing is increased by 25%, and their effectiveness of the periodic effects is increased from 25%, was 20. I don't know that this is going to be enough. Dots already feel pretty bad in general on Druid. So if their intent was to buff Adaptive Swarm, at least for balance, to hope that maybe we use Stellar Flare more, I just don't like Stellar Flare. I don't like casting it. I really don't like doing a lot with it. I really try to avoid using it even on fights that's technically better on, but I understand that in things like Shriekwing, things like Sledge Fist, it is technically better. I don't know. I see more Necro Druids in PvP more than anything, because Bone Shield, which we'll talk about in a second, Bone Shield, Fleshcraft, I always call it Bone Shield, is going to be tweaked, and it's actually going to be in a really good spot after today, or after next week, excuse me. And then Convoke, Night Fae can no longer cast Full Moon Feral Frenzy for Guardian Resto. This is pretty big, I will say, just because there was a lot of, they called it, was it Moonkin Weaving and Cat Weaving that was going on with Guardian Resto, and you could still get the Full Moon procs. I think this is probably fair, because those Convokes shouldn't be as strong regardless of the affinity compared to the core talent class. For instance, a Guardian should not be able to get 100% utilization out of the balance and using Convoke. They should be able to use the balance affinity just fine, but adding Full Moon or taking out Full Moon and Feral Frenzy makes a lot more sense, in my opinion. And then, yeah, now increases your critical strike chance. This is just a conduit change. This isn't an actual change to the Covenant ability, and that's how I misread it the first time I was reading this. So I think that they're just continuously tuning this stuff. Probably this is going to just bump it up a little bit more. I mean, I think, I don't even know if you really necessarily run this for Guardian, but if you did as a Venthyr, I mean, it's a nice little tweak. So Hunter. So overall, Druid tweaking resto, couple, Covenant tweaking, not bad overall. Hunter. So Hunters avoid the sated debuff when casting Primal Rage. That's just a fix, and the same with the Feigned Death. I didn't even know that was a thing. Opened their map or used it in Mo. That's funny. Beast Mastery. Spitting Cobra is now increased to 260%. This is quite a bit. I don't know if this is going to be able to tip the scales on Beastmaster actually coming back into the fold. I know Marksman's going to eventually kind of fall off just because of the fact that they don't scale super well. So it's interesting. I don't really play BM that often, but I'd be curious to see if that actually changes anything. Fixed an issue where volley the talent right after aim shot, bad for trick shot, would sometimes not apply trick shot. Interesting. Not that Marksman really needed help with like any sort of cleave AoE scenarios, but interesting. And then survival, I feel like it's just an absolute joke to Blizzard at this point with how they do their tuning and everything. I know this is a fix on that, but hey. Interesting on the resonating arrow could fail to be cast behind your character. So not know that. This is good. I mean, I like Death Chakram. I think that it's a cool ability. I really know that it was good on the PTR there for a while, and then they nerfed it. So I'm really excited to see that get a damage buff. I don't know if that's going to be enough, quite frankly, because Wild Spirits is arguably like one of the best AoE. If you have a single target with cleave AoE, it is one of the best in my opinion. So I don't know if Death Chakram is going to really help or push them off of that. And then obviously for PvP, you're taking Resonating Arrow, like hands down. Just to avoid a line of sight is just insane. It's such a broken ability. It's so cool that Hunter's got that too. Flayed Shot, duration is increased to 18 seconds. That's not bad. And the cost, no focus, which is also really good as far as fitting into your rotation. And it increases the damage of your kill shot. So like all of this stuff is actually leaning towards like, Venthyr looking pretty good. I'd be curious more to see how it performs in Raid than anything else. Partially because, getting rid of that no focus cost will just make it feel better in the rotation. And then, just extra kill shot damage, especially on those bosses where you are really either have a boss that you're in an execute phase for quite a bit, or you are kind of like looking through there, looking for, bursting that boss down because of an enrage or whatever. I'm actually going to remove the doggos. I love Yfin and Piper. And then I'm going to move my image. We're going to put it over here. There we go. That looks a lot better. Covenant abilities. So anyways, for Hunter, I think they're in a good spot. BM needs a little bit more tweaking in my opinion, but maybe it'll scale up better by the end of the X pack. Good Covenant ability tuning in my opinion, and then the rest is just bug fixes, right there. So about Mage. I mean, they're buffing a lot of really just Covenant ability changes. They're just buffing the overall damage of Radiant Spark, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to solve anything. Personally, just because Radiant Spark is simply there just for a pure damage throughput. That's it. That's all it's really there for. It just amplifies whatever you're already doing. So you pre-cast it before Combust or Icy Veins or your Arcane Power, and that's it. That's all you get. So to me, personally, that doesn't really sound as engaging, with that. Deathborn increased from 20 to 25 seconds, and the spell power increased to 10 to 15. I mean, I really like the idea of Deathborn, and the fact that you turn into this skeletal mage, and that your fireballs and your frostbolts and your arcane blasts are hitting multiple targets. It's probably more beneficial for, I would say, probably arcane the most, with arcane blast just being a really good damage spell in PvE scenarios. And frostbolt not bad either. I mean, you're obviously spamming frostbolt, but you're mixing in then too Ice Lance's flurry, right? All of those other things too. So to me, when you're in your burn phase for an arcane mage, Deathborn seems to line up the best with that. I don't know. I love the concept of it, but I just, from it actually playing out, I don't know if this is going to be enough. Mirrors of Torment. So my mage was actually Venthyr initially because I really thought that Mirrors of Torment would be it was looking like it was going to be in a good spot because of the conduit that it had for PvE and in PvP. To be able to silence and root someone for 4 seconds just kind of seemed broken. In practicality, the way it turned out is it's still not in a bad spot for PvE, which I think these buffs to now grants a clear casting when mirrors is consumed is cool. Was mana. I mean, I think that'll feel better. And then Fire Blast cooldown reduction increased to 6 seconds was 4 seconds. Once again, I think that going back to what I was saying, I do think it was help in a PvE scenario. PvP, I still don't think it feels good, mostly because it really does seem to kind of proc randomly. I know it is after they cast, 3 spells, and it's consuming each one of those mirrors. But if you're playing against someone that actually knows what they're doing, they will purposefully get into a position, cast a spell, root and silence himself maybe behind a pillar, so you as a mage can't hit him, and then it's kind of wasted, at least it feels. I mean, granted, that is time outside of the actual fight that they're doing, but I don't know that actually feels that good. So I think it's good steps, at least the Deathborn and Mirrors. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Radiant, so I'll just leave that one alone. So talk about Monk. Feel bad for him. I really do. Mostly because Mistweaver is just in such a shitty spot right now, and Vivify, Renewing Mist, getting these buffs. I mean, that's good. I don't know if that actually solves the issue of Mistweaver right now. They have fantastic throughput, but that's about it. That's all you do. So, I'm very much in the boat of I liked Mistweaver when I would heal on it with mine, but I much prefer Resto Shaman, Disc Priest, Holy Paladin. Those all feel much better in my opinion. So they need some other niche, I would say. Maybe messing with their revival or something like that, where you could get their cooldown reduction through doing certain order of spells. I mean, because Windwalker has this kind of the combo point thing where you can't cast the same ability in a row, otherwise they'll lose like a damage or essentially your mastery. So I'd be curious to see if they could do something like that for Mistweaver. I think it would feel like a lot better. So Windwalker actually got a nerf. But I'll start by saying this. The Zune, the White Tiger, is now vulnerable to Hibernate, Polymorph, and Fear crowd control effects. That's pretty huge. Mostly because you can now actually peel him off of you in PvP scenarios, which is pretty incredible in my eyes. It's a huge bit of damage as a Windwalker, specifically in PvP. And the fact that they added this is going to be a really, really big game changer. I mean, that means druids and mages and, priests or warlocks and warriors. I mean, they're all going to have viable counters to that too. Touch of Death is now affected by Master Combo Strikes. That was the one I was just talking about, Master Combo Strikes. I mean, that's not bad. I mean, yeah, it's going to hit harder. I wonder if it's going to scale off of the health of the monk too, but we'll see. Fixed an issue with Storm. Okay, so this whole section right here. These two are bug changes, with how the pets were targeting enemies that were in stealth. This change right here, from everything down, is a pretty significant nerf to Windwalkers actually. So Windwalker, it's kind of been a running joke in the community that they've been in a position where they've actually had a bug that was allowing them to do more DPS, and it went untouched for so long that it kind of just became the running joke in the monk community that they were just that was just part of the class. And now they've actually decided to fix it while monks are in a really good spot, which is inevitably going to probably hurt their DPS quite significantly. The biggest kind of changes that they're doing is essentially this Mark of the Crane. It is gaining an additional stack when it's active. However, it was a bug that when the target dies, it would still pretend like it had that Mark of the Crane, which was then increasing your overall throughput. And there's a talent too that gives you a chance to proc Spinning Crane Kick for, I think it was like 200% increased damage, I think is what it is. Which if you look at like logs and you look at, even in PvP scenarios too, that is a significant portion of the Windwalker's damage. And it's probably going to change. I mean, it's legitimately going to change it. Also, too, there were some weird things happening with Storm, Earth, and Fire, too, using Fist of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, and Whirling Dragon Punch, too. So, essentially, what you would do is you would start channeling Fist of the Fury and then cancel and do one of these other abilities, and the Storm, Earth, and Fire would continue casting that until it ended. So, I mean, I feel for Windwalkers, I really do, because it kind of sucks that they're doing this at a time where they're on top. If it was anything any other time, I wouldn't probably feel as bad. But it needed to be fixed, I'll say. So I guess good thing they're fixing it. Either way, grab a drink real quick. Looks like they're also fixing an issue with the Feline Stomp. Very pretty ability, I will say. I do really, really like that. If 50% of my characters weren't all Night Fae, I probably would be choosing something else. Fallen Order, it's pretty good too. I mean, the Vendir buff I think was needed as well. I do like Fallen Order as well, I will say, too. So maybe I'll switch my monk over at some point. We'll see. So overall, Monk, feel for him. Mistweaver needs more. It's just that. I mean, Mistweaver needs so much more. I mean, their throughput is nuts, but give him something else. Come on, Blizz. Paladin, Holy Shock now costs 16% more mana. Okay, so this is not really fixing anything, in my opinion. I mean, Holy Shock is already in a really good spot. They have Glimmer, too, which is part of their talent tree, which just makes it so much better, even, too, from a damage and healing perspective. I genuinely don't think that this solves much with it. So I'm going to talk a little bit more because we'll get to it here with the conduits. But Protection's Heal now has a visual effect. Ooh, I'm curious to see what that looks like. And the Vanquisher's Hammer now generates 1 more holy power when used. I've seen some theory crafting on this, and it actually does put Vanquisher's Hammer closer to being in line with Ashen Hollow and Divine Toll. But I just think from a simple, Ashen Hollow is just insane as far as the damage and healing you can do as a Holy Paladin. And then with Divine Toll, it pretty much fits that niche everywhere else. For Vank Hammer to really, deserve a spot, I think, they're going in the right direction by having the Holy Power. But I would almost like to see, your Holy Power generation is increased by a certain amount, too, for, maybe a time period after that, instead of just generating 1 Holy Power. The extra spells from Ring Clarity no longer delay between hits. Additionally, area of effective judgment hits from Divine Toll are no longer reduced by 25% in PvP, and judgment triggered from Ring Clarity is reduced by 25%. This needed to happen. If you go out there and just search for videos of people using the blinding light, which is their blind that every paladin has access to in their talent tree, it is a blind, but it is not broken by holy damage. So what they would do is they would blind, pop all their cooldowns, Avenging Wrath, trinkets, whatever, and then they would Divine Toll someone, and they literally were getting hit for upwards of 60, 70, 80% of their health and not even breaking the blind, which allowed the paladin to get in position, and then Templar's Verdict, boom, dead. Hammer of Wrath, whatever it might be. So I'm glad that they're changing this. That needed changed. I still think it's just ridiculous that Blinding Light doesn't break, period, even with holy damage. I think that needs to be changed ASAP for PvP, because that's just extremely frustrating to play against. Virtuous Command no longer plays an attack animation when triggers. Okay. And then fixed a bug. Okay, cool. Paladins, Holy needs something. It is literally the meta healer right now for PvP. It's in a very good spot for PvE. I think in PvE it's a lot more niche. So when you're looking at raids, you always do want to bring 1 Holy Paladin, but it's not you're stacking 4 of them you maybe are Resto Shamans right now. But PvP, it just something needs to change. They need to alter either the other healers or kind of change Holy to actually use mana, preferably. So because every comp has a Holy Paladin right now. All right, let's talk about Priest. Discipline with Spirit Shell now absorbs 80% healing done. Was 100, and the absorption limit is now based on the caster's spell power rather than their maximum health. This is a good change. As much as I hate it, because I love having Spirit Shell and Raid, this needed to be changed, because having Spirit Shell was pretty much mandatory. It still is mandatory even after this, in my opinion, but it really needed to be changed, because it was going to then slowly approach over the course of this expansion, being more and more and more required as scaling were to increase, as your maximum health would increase. Now, granted, your spell power is still going to increase, but probably at not which the same rate of maximum health, too. And you could cheese the hell out of it, too, with certain things. So that's good. Divine Hymn increases healing taken by 4%, was 10%. For 15 seconds was 8 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Was no stacks. So I think this is really good. I think this is a good use, because Holy right now struggles. They have excellent throughput, kind of similar to Monk. but they really bring no other utility. And I think this Divine Hymn is a perfect example of where you can bring one Holy Priest, and they're going to be able to help you push that extra healing intensive phase. I think that, in Mythic Plus, it's not bad. In PvP, they've been kind of making a little bit of a run right now, with it. So it's curious to see. I mean, you're channeling Divine Hymn, just keep that in mind. So it's not really a PvP ability, in my opinion. But for Raid, especially, yeah, I mean, you'll notice too, healing increased by 100% when not in Raid. I think this is going to push it because of the fact that it increases your healing taken overall too. So it'll just help from everything else. Shadow Weaving no longer benefits multiple times from damage amplifying effects. If it was, that's pretty broken. Shadow Apparitions no longer cause targets to drop stealth if they deal no damage. I mean, that's probably good that they had that. This was pretty busted too. The Covenant ability Fate Guardians. It was the Night Fae one for priests. At one point, it was also not only reducing damage, but it was also reducing the cooldown of whoever it was on too. So what people were expecting was that you would bring a Shadow Priest to raid and pair them with a Fire Mage, and the Fire Mage would be getting a ridiculous amount of combust off. So I'm glad that they've scaled this back now a little bit more. I think that is in line. I like the ability. I don't need another Night Fae, especially another Cloth Night Fae, because my Mage is currently hit and my Warlock is looking like it's going to have to be it if I even want to try to be competitive on it, but kind of waiting. So the rest of it's just tuning, and Mind Games no longer reverses damage or healing from itself when reflected. That's pretty interesting too. I'm glad that they're changing that. So yeah, Priests overall, I think they're doing some good tuning to Discipline, and maybe a little bit more to Holy would have been nice. Shadow is just going to increasingly get better, so I think that they're just kind of preparing for that too. Talk about Rogue. This is like maybe the first time in WoW's history that Rogue has been in the place that it is, unfortunately. Them extending the duration of Slice and Dice up to 3 seconds per combo point spent. I don't know how much that's really going to solve, because you're already using Slice and Dice at a pretty nominal amount as an assassination, at least from what I've heard. Venomous Runes now restoring a little bit of energy, I think is good. It might make it feel not so energy starved. And then they're removing the Slice and Dice, the rank 2 from it. And I think this is good because they're realizing that they don't want to make Slice and Dice mandatory for every single rogue spec. Or at least not feel as like so heavily weighted in your rotation. May ignore the fixes in both those, but they're pretty interesting. Same with the pre-med, rarely not applied when entering stealth. That's frustrating. I mean, these things are kind of all, in line. Serrated Bone Spike and initial damage increased by 300% and now grants 1 combo point plus 1 per active Bone Spike after it strikes the target. That's pretty cool. This used to be broken on the PTR, and they've actually changed this. So I'm kind of excited to see this come back into the mix. And then Bone Spike is now removed when the target leaves combat and no longer refunds a charge, and gets removed when the target is healed to full. I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I get the leaving combat piece, but, I don't know about the feeling of being healed to full health. I think that feels pretty bad in my opinion, but I think it's too much. But maybe because of the 300% increased damage, they had to feel like a weight it somehow, and this is their way of doing that. And the rest of it's kind of bug tuning, or just tuning a little bit. That's cool that Serrated Bone now is correctly increased by the mastery, assassination's mastery. That's pretty neat. This is a good change too for the broadside, the outlaw talent too. Now correctly causes. That's interesting. Why is it listed as a broadside from Jaina? That's funny. Flagellation no longer costs energy, was 20. Duration increased to 12 seconds, was 20. Haste is now granted immediately and no longer has a second activation. Flagellation's initial damage is increased by 270%. Additional damage from spending combo points is increased by 160. And the dealing damage one time upon use. It said it was 3. I think this is good. I leveled a rogue in the PTR just to kind of just see the storyline without feeling rushed, kind of like we did with launch. I think this is good. I'm probably going to go Venthyr on my rogue, mostly because I really like the leather armor set, and I like these changes too with flagellation. I think this is like a good step in the right direction. I'm curious to see in both PvE and PvP scenarios how this is going to compare to Sepsis. And obviously, Door of Shadows, in my opinion, is just like a poor man's the Night Fae one, Soul Shape. I know you can go further. I know you can do more with it. That's more like the Disorient and things like that. But as a rogue, someone that you're already trying to move around the map quickly, stay in the shadows, right? I don't know that, casting a Door of Shadows is going to feel super good. So we'll see. This is just them tuning this for Venthyr. So I think it's a good step for all this. I think that they're identifying that Rogue is in somewhat of a weak spot right now. There's really not a whole reason to bring them in raid, other than Cloak can be good in some scenarios. Having that, just that quick melee is always good. But there could be others out there too that are doing better. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how it goes. Let's talk about Shamans. Shaman Chain Lightning damage increased by 35%. This was needed. I'll talk a little bit about it when we get to Elemental, but this was for sure needed across the board. Chain Lightning just didn't feel good to press. And yeah, Lightning Shield also did not feel good to press at all. It felt like it was literally just a wet noodle and someone just kind of hitting me. Okay, well, whatever. Elemental, so Earth Shock damage increased by 30%. Earthquake damage increased by 70%. Lava Beam, which is the Ascension version of Lava Burst, increased by 35%, and Lava Burst damage reduction by 10%. So when you look at like the damage profile, right, of a Shaman, right now Lava Burst is so heavily weighted in that damage profile. Earthshock, Earthquake, those sorts of things, I think need to hit harder. Earthshock feels bad to press. Earthquake feels even worse in AoE situations. So that paired with the Chain Lightning, I think is going to be good. I don't know that that's going to fix, though, their issue in, let's say, like a Mythic Plus. And the reason I say that is because there are already so many quick AoE DPSers right now. And, you've got your Fire Mages, you've got your Boomkins they're constantly throwing out. You got your Wild Spirits Hunters, right? You got your Unholy Death Knights, where they just, like, ramp up almost, like, within a couple GCDs, and they're just pumping. Whereas with Elemental Shaman, it's kind of like a slow ramp up. You got to get enough Maelstrom, then to press Earthquake. You got to hope that you get Overload proc. You've got Stormkeeper that gives you 2 instant ones, but that's a minute and a half cooldown. So I don't know. I don't know if it's enough. With it. Enhancement like Lava Lash damage increased by 40%. That's pretty substantial. I'm wondering if they're trying to push that Lava Lash build. Stormkeeper talent now increases Chain Lightning by 300%. Was 2 Lightning Bolts by 150%. So, I think all of these are like good tuning things for them as well. I think adding Chain Lightning, to the Stormkeeper talent for enhancement's a good move as well. Restoration, reducing Lava Burst is probably needed. It does hit pretty hard. Vesper Totem buff, that'll be interesting to see if that actually holds any weight. I know it was already somewhat competitive, so this might push it over the edge. And same with Fey Transfusion. I think that's also like a really good point too, where I think that they are in a very, very good spot already with this ability. At least I thought personally when I was leveling mine, and this is just going to continue to push that forward. Primordial Wave for enhancement shot, lightning bolt, increasing that damage by 150% from 100. That's good because right now it's like you go Necro if you're playing Ellie or Resto, and then you go Venthyr if you're playing Enhancement. So maybe this might make it not feel as bad for those people trying to tri-spec it. So interested to see that. And then, Chain Harvest, once again, damage and healing increased by 15%, wow, for Elemental and Resto. So kind of going the other direction, right, with what I just said, trying to make, Chain Harvest also competitive for Ellie and Resto. I don't think that this is going to be enough specifically for Resto, and the reason I say that is because, with the way Primordial Wave works for Resto and in allowing you to heal all targets affected with your Riptide, that feels so good, and I don't know that having this, Chain Harvest just do more is going to really solve that problem. So I think that they've made a lot of good changes to Shaman right now. I think that they will be much more balanced across their single target AoE. I just still think that they suffer from that ramp period. Too, I think in PvP they'll be perfectly fine. Quite honestly, most of these changes are PvE focused, with the one PvP change for Ellie being Earthshock's gonna hit harder, but your overall damage generally is leaning towards Lava Burst more, so they might not nearly be as bursty too. I don't know. We'll see. That 30% is quite a bit. Too. So
right, let's talk about Warlocks next. Curse of Tongues now last 1 minute, was 30 seconds, and now 20 seconds against players to 12 seconds. I think that's probably just them realizing that locks are, maybe just putting up too many curses all at once. And then Malefic Rapture no longer causes targets to drop stealth if deals no damage. I see that they're trying to understand why rogues are getting pulled out, maybe by things that they're dealing no damage to them, which is really good to see, because I think that has been a problem. Seed Corruption now properly deal damage applies corruption if the Warlock is crowd control when the seed detonates. Okay, that's good fix. That's kind of nice too, that all the pets listen to the primary pet. I like that a lot. And Call Dread Stalkers is attack virus increased by 10%. I mean, that's even better too. So yeah, overall, I mean, I think that this is some good changes. I'm curious. Interesting that the Destruction is Mastery. They're including corruption on that. Scouring Tithe for Kyrian now requires the Warlock to be facing the target. Didn't know you could even cast it behind there. Decimating Bolt, bonus damage from the target's missing health is increased by 100% with 60%. I personally really like the Necro Lord one. I want to go Necro on my Warlock, so I like to see that they're buffing this stuff, so we'll see if it's enough. And impending catastrophe damage while moving, its target has been increased by 10%, and its explosion damage increased by 15%. I think that I think that they're just once again trying to bring everything in line up to where Soul Rot is for Night Fae for Warlock. So I think it's good changes. Just for doing something like that. And then lastly, Warriors fixed an issue where they intervened to be applied under the effect of Cyclone. That was definitely needed. I've had that happen to me before. A little fix with Whirlwind, and then damage of all abilities increased by 10%. Damage of Thunderclap increased by 10%. They needed this. Protection's kind of a bit of a joke right now. I actually just logged on my Warrior the other day, and I was kind of like, okay, what are they good at? Really nothing. So I'm glad to see that this is the case. I don't know if this is going to be enough, but we'll see. And then lastly, 2 Conqueror's Banner has been redesigned. Brandish the Conqueror banner, granting 400 mastery and 30% increased movement speed for your 2 nearest allies. So this is kind of like where the running joke now is going to be that there's going to be Necro simp warriors, where you're just going to bring them to raids and you're going to give them to things like, your Windwalkers or, anyone that really benefits from a lot of mastery is going to just find this broken at the end of the day. So I'm interested to see how this actually plays out. Too. So, and I, before I kind of, pause here too, I'll talk a little bit about Fleshcraft. So Fleshcraft is getting really kind of like just redesigned as an overhaul. So you now are, it's a 3-second cast of a 4-second cast, and the damage is equal to the 40% of your maximum health for the next 2 minutes. While channeling, your damage is reduced by 20%, and moving to a nearby enemy corpse grants their essence, reduces the Fleshcraft's cooldown by 1%. This is pretty interesting, and I think why people find this one so appealing now is because you will be able to use this during things like raid mechanics, right? And reduce your damage taken by 20%, which is pretty significant. I mean, it's nothing to joke about, but or just glance over. But it might push some people, to kind of consider the Necro Lord Covenant if they were already on the edge, because right now Fleshcraft does not feel good to press really at all. The only thing that really feels good to press is in the 1 soulbind that makes you immune to CC. That's like the only time I personally have felt like it was even worth it, and that's what my Shaman is right now. I haven't really messed with it on my DK too much, but anyways. So I think it was good. I'm not going to go into detail on all the other soulbinds and Ember Court and all that. I will touch on the dungeons here real quick. Increasing it to 45 seconds with the charm with it. This is just going to push people coming into Halls of Atonement more, Venthyr, to have that person to charm them. But their damage is now reduced by 50% while charmed, and still more boon duration increased to 40%. So once again, reducing their damage too. I don't know if that's going to really do anything, at the end of the day. I mean, it's going to obviously reduce the damage by 50%, but I still think you'll want to bring one. Anima Cages now persist for 1 minute, was 45 seconds, while active Sinful Boon is applied to players. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. That's good. I mean, all these are just more or less little changes, here or there. So let's talk a little bit about item rewards too, and the Valor point system, because this is really where I think is a lot of the big changes. So first off, the voted community mount, right? The Wandering Haitian's now available. It changes with the seasons. They should showcase that at BlizzCon a couple weeks ago. It was really cool. Valor points are being added to the game. I really want to touch on too that I think that it's very good on Blizzard to be making these changes. I think we've seen this also very recently with 8.3 with corruption, where they added the essences of Nyalotha or whatever the heck it was, where you were able to purchase corruption. It was on a rotating vendor, which was a little tilting, but you were still able to get them one way or another. I think that by them adding Valor points into the game, allowing you to shoot for these achievements, so you can increase the initial upgrade to 200 eye level, okay? Which, just give people a reference, I think Mythic 10, 11 is like 203, I want to say. So, essentially what it does is by getting all Mythic 5s, you're able to get to 207 eye level, which is really cool. And then by getting all Mythic 10s, you get to 213, which is on par with Heroic Nathria. So you being say a casual player, just trying to get 10s, which I think are very doable right now with the current state of the fact that Renown's almost completely capped out. You can get full 197 gear just from doing your Covenant campaign. You can do some PvP and get other means, of getting gear too. I think it's very achievable to get to 200 eye level right now. So saying you can get to 207 by just doing 5+5s, which are, you could even do at like 190, 195 eye level. I think this is a fair system. 220 for Keystone Master 15, that's the one where I question a little bit. I mean, being able to complete plus 15s with less than a 220 eye level is doable, very much so, but it's difficult. And I think that they're trying to put that challenge in there, but they also know that people are going to be getting things like their Great Vault. They might be doing PvP. They might be raiding. So there's other means at which you're going to get gear above 220 eye level. I mean, I think right now if you complete a 13, you get 223, and like 10, 11, 12, right, is all 220 out of the Great Vault at the end of the week. So it's not bad. I mean, I think they're going in a step in the right direction. I think that they're hearing the community feedback and they're actually implementing these systems, which, like it or not, is a good way to do this. I'm a full supporter of doing things like this, because now when I log on to an alt, let's say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, okay, what should I be targeting? What should I be, focusing on? Oh, I want this staff. Okay, let me go farm that staff and then use my Valor points that I've earned, right, through completing dungeons and even Covenant callings, which I didn't even see the callings up there initially. But I think that that's a good system, personally. We'll see how it actually plays out in practicality. The community's been asking for this for a very long time, so we'll see what this looks like. Great Vault loot requirement is now defeat 369 bosses instead of 3710. Yeah, I mean, I kind of see why they're doing this, and I think that the bigger reason is that just a normal clear of Nathria is going to net you 9, or excuse me, would it have netted you 10 of those bosses? So potencies, conduits now also drop in Nathria. Thank the Lord. My God, that was probably one of the most frustrating things, is that only way you get your potency conduits above 200 eye level is by rolling the Venari fucking, whatever, wheel of conduits and hoping that you're getting that. So the once players reach 40 down, getting more anima and now gold. I'm cool with that. Anima's kind of scarce right now. Vendor prices for items have almost have been adjusted. Okay, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, overall, I think that, this is good. And I just want to highlight that I'm really a big fan of the system. I'm hoping it works out. I'm hoping it sticks around, too. It will definitely give me a lot more motivation to play the game, too. I'm not going to go into super big detail on some of the legendaries here. There is a lot of tuning going on with some of them. I don't know that any of that I've seen have been, too crazy, but they are trying to bring a lot more of them in line by buffing some, which I really like to see. I'd rather they buff other ones than nerf existing legendaries. So overall, this, I think, I'm like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through all these. I think that they're all, in line with what they're trying to push. PvP stuff, there's a couple tuning changes, fixes. They've adjusted some of the brutal assault and focus assaults that you get in those battlegrounds. I really even care about Ashran, but I'm glad to see that they're actually changing things about that, because that's been one of the worst like player count even being just reduced from 35 to 30. Like I avoid those epic battlegrounds like the plague at the end of the day. More tuning. They're like we talked about with these, they're adjusting the distinguishability of those effects, even in PvP scenarios, which is good to see. Some more PvP adjusting. I see some ice form is no longer in the GCD, which is good because neither is Icy Veins. The ultimate sacrifice talent for Holy Paladin is going to have an effect. So yeah, I mean, I think that, just kind of skimming through the rest here, they're tuning a bit. There is a ton of Torghast changes. A lot of people I've seen say, oh my gosh, they're nerfing so much. I think it's more like they're bringing in line, some things more than it is anything else. So I'm not going to go through all this. This is just Torghast. Most of it's just kind of like whatever. It's pretty busted, but it's cool to see like during altar time, you and your mirror images gain time warp. Like something like that is pretty cool because I know there's an altar time build. Ice Black has no cooldown. That's pretty funny too that they added those. So I'm going to be curious to see kind of some of those changes. Maybe if I can see some of those. Gain the effect of Stormkeeper every 15 seconds. That sounds like a blast. Yeah, that sounds really fun. So some companion app changes, but that's it. Overall, I think that they've done like a good job with the supplemental patch. I'm a little nervous on what this means for 9.1, mostly because we are hitting a bit of a content drought right now, and I don't know that there's no real like content, right? This is all tuning stuff that's in this patch. So I'm very curious to see what are they going to actually like get 9.1 out. The rumor is that with 9.0.5 coming on Tuesday, usually it's about a week, and then the 9.1 PTR or the next PTR of the patch, upcoming after that would hit. So we'll see if they follow that same kind of like guideline with it. I personally, like I said, I'm very excited because I think that it will give me more of a reason to play the game. Right now I'm just leveling alts, just kind of playing when I want to, maybe making some gold, doing some callings. That's what I'm about to do, is just like run through all my callings, because there's like 3 Revendreth world quest or callings open right now, which is like perfect because you can just knock them all out in one sweep. So I'm very, very curious on that. So I'm going to take a quick break, hit stop on this recording, and I'll be back in about 5 or 10. Talk to you guys soon.